Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a guest coming to us from Portland, Oregon, Jeff Patterson, and he has a unique approach known as the Yielding Warrior Method, and he teaches 5 basic regulations that are fundamental to any meditative practice. So I'm really excited to have him on. I'm always having spiritual teachers, coaches, entrepreneurs, and I'm really happy to have Jeff on the show to talk about the work that he's done in mastering stress and the meditative arts with the Yielding Warrior. So Jeff, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, briefly introduce yourself, what you do, and I'm really happy to dive into the conversation.
Yeah, so I have been running a martial arts and meditation center here in Portland, Oregon now for about 30 years. Been very fortunate to have about 26,000 students come through the academy, and through the years handing down the meditative arts, I've been fortunate to be witness to hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives and seen some really life-changing transformations, which has given me the energy and the motivation to really want to spread the word. And it's what motivated me to write my last couple books and create my online program and my teacher training program to just try to get the message out there and teach people how to use a meditative practice in their life without having to go retire to a cave and spend the rest of your life in meditation. And so there's so many different things that we can integrate into everything we do. You'll see that it's really pretty easy to adapt a meditation practice in your life. It just takes a little bit of consistency and focus, and you really can reap a lot of benefits from the practice.
Yeah, really interesting. And so I want to dive into the conversation because I've always been interested in this area. And first thing is talk about these 3 types of meditation and how one can use it in their life.
I think you're referring to ritual, active, and philosophical methods. And these are basic pillars in your practice. With any kind of meditation practice, there's basically 5 different directions that you can follow on a meditative path. And I break those down into kind of more of the athletic approach, which helps with your performance and awareness and just making you more in tune and more connected to your body and mind-body connection. Then there's the therapeutic side of the practice, which is great for longevity and overall health. Then there's the medical side of the practice, which all of Chinese medicine is based off of Qigong theory, which is a meditative practice. Then there's the philosophical side of the training, and then also the spiritual side of the training, which is what most people I think about when they hear meditation. So once you have figured out what path you want to follow, then there's 3 modalities or ways that we can integrate these meditative practices into our life. And there's many different practices, but they all fit in these kind of 3 different realms. And they are ritual practices, which is where we set a little bit of time aside every day and we do a sitting meditation or a movement practice like a Tai Chi form or a Qigong set or maybe some yoga postures, something that enables us to just turn off all of our cell phones and our video screens and just turn ourselves inward and really listen to the moment, being present, and try to connect with that mind-body connection without any distractions. Then we have active practices, which is the second pillar. And these are things that we can integrate into our day and use when we're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. And there are ways that we can incorporate this mindset and this training into everything we do, because when we integrate meditation into our life, it's meant to be a way of life and not a hobby that we do once in a while. And by using these active practices, it allows us to stay in that mindset and that awareness state all day long. It doesn't really make any sense if you meditate for a half an hour and feel really good and peaceful, and then the whole rest of the day you're stressed out. So these things help us keep that focus and steer our mind and our bodies out of those distractions that come to us all day, every day. And then the third pillar is the philosophical approach or practices that we use. And these can be both in ritual practices as well as active practices. And by integrating these three different methods, we can now start to build an evolving life practice around the meditative arts that helps us down any one of those 5 paths that we choose to follow.
Yeah, I really love that. And it's really interesting is you're talking about the long-term sustain, but then also like periodic, like daily resets and adjustments, in the moment type, could be depending on if you're sitting in traffic or you're standing in line or dealing with stressful clients. The other question I have for you is, what are the 5 regulations and how will that lead to a healthier life?
So the 5 regulations are core fundamental basics that we cultivate in any meditation practice. And it doesn't matter if you're doing a sitting practice or a movement practice like Tai Chi, Qigong, or yoga, or if you're doing standing meditation or breath work. These 5 fundamental principles, when you cultivate them, will give you the foundation to really get deep into your practice. And they are regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. And very briefly, I'll touch on what all of those are so you understand how the foundation of these practices can really help enrich our lives. The first one, regulating the body, the basic idea is learning how to be aware of our skeletal alignment and our muscular tension and how we move throughout the day. So for example, imagine maybe you're sitting down at your computer for 3 or 4 hours and you start feeling lethargic and maybe your shoulders are getting tight and you're feeling very depleted in your energetic state. And then think about another time when maybe the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel this energetic rush and everything feels great. We are in 100% control of those 2 different energetic states all day, every day. And the question is, which one do you want to be in? Because we can make either one of those things happen. Now, this is a basic idea of regulating the body. On a little deeper level, we start talking about what are we doing to maintain some idea of muscular structure in the body and stay flexible. What kind of diet are we eating to keep our energy up and maintain some level of health? How much sleep are we getting? All of these different things are part of regulating the body. Then we have regulating the breath. And regulating the breath is an extremely deep topic and something that if you take on a meditative practice, you'll do for the rest of your life. There's hundreds of different breathing strategies. And in fact, in Qigong, they often refer to defining Qigong as the science of the breath, because there's literally hundreds of different methods that give us different outcomes. And when we understand how to adjust the breath to get these different outcomes, now we can control our physical, mental, and emotional states. And in Chinese philosophy, they call this balancing the Kan and Li. And an example of this would be if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is a yin style of breath. It's bringing that energy inward, which is very good for stress reduction. It's good dealing with anxiety or panic attacks. It's good for your creativity. And there's many different reasons why we would do this yin style of breathing. Then we have the yang side of the breath, which is more aggressive. An example of that would be If you've ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to put tension in the breath, make it audible, put power in the breath, and this helps generate energy and extend it outward. So now when we start understanding how to use this strategy, we all go through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people are like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you start understanding how to use the breath, when you notice yourself starting to get excited, we can use the yin side of the breath to help bring it back down. When we see ourselves starting to feel depleted, we can use the yang side of the breath to help pick us back up. And this can help us regulate and adjust our states throughout the day. Then we have the third regulation, which is regulating the mind. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say when they tell me, oh, I've tried meditation or meditation doesn't work for me or whatever they say, is they'll think that because they try it and their mind races all over the place and they can't quiet their mind, that they're failing. And it couldn't be further from the truth. One of the most eye-opening things I think for people to understand is that you can't quiet your mind. Your mind is always going to have thoughts, but are you fighting those thoughts, or are you learning how to guide them down a path and find yourself back to a balanced state? I've been training now for 36 years. I've traveled around the world and trained with some amazing teachers through my career. And I've never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. Everybody does. And once we start understanding how to regulate the mind and understand these imbalances and control them, it gives us a lot of power. There's a story that I really enjoy about these two monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm and everything's muddy everywhere. They come up to this big mud puddle, and on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress and she's crying. And the older monk, he yells across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." And so the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and he picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road. And finally, the younger monk is just furious. And he says, "We're not supposed to touch girls, but yet you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many times in life do we get caught up 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize we got to let that thing go? And so understanding how to recognize these imbalances and have the tools to help find that focus and find that balanced state is really valuable. And then the fourth regulation is regulating the energy. And regulating the energy is a very deep topic and something that we could chat about for hours, but briefly, I'll just give you an idea of what it means. So once we have reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, we now have the tools to guide the energy in the body inward, to extend it outward, to circulate it in the body. And these are all things that are needed through some of the different energetic and meditative practices that we do. And lastly, we have regulating the spirit. This is a very profound idea and something that meditation masters will spend their entire life's journey working towards that stage of ultimate enlightenment. Now, when you understand these basic 5 regulations and see how these fundamental principles are the foundation of a meditation practice, it's easy to see how cultivating a meditation practice in your life can affect everything you do and really help you in endless amounts of endeavors that you might come up upon.
I really like that. And because I'm very spiritual, and so I love always when you talk about techniques, tools and techniques such as meditation. It could be other things to enhance could be your physical performance, or could be your mental performance. So in the older I get, the more I realize kind of these tools really can help you guide your energy and, what you focus on. So what is another question I have for you is, what is yielding and how is it useful?
Yielding is a very interesting concept, and it's used in the meditative arts as well as the martial arts. And in my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, I've broken down yielding into three different categories. We have physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's a bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force, and now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. Now, it's obvious to see how this is beneficial in any kind of athletics, because no matter what sport you play, there's going to be people who are bigger and stronger than you. And if you don't understand how to use this concept or this idea of yielding, and you just try to butt heads with everybody, you're going to lose more often than not. And in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed. The breath has to be calm. The mind has to be present. Now, while it may be a lifetime journey to really master these skills, once you start a meditation practice, from day one, you start learning how to be more in tune and more aware with all of these things that are happening inside your body. Now, and this is where it becomes very interesting, because you see these things more clearly inside yourself, you also start to see them more clearly in other people. So say, for example, and now we're moving into what I call mental yielding. If you and I are having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it right from that first sign of imbalance, it's very easy to adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place. But if I'm not paying attention to that, pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to slap me upside the head. This is not good. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, we're just being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of anyway. And two, it allows us to be strategic in our interactions and guide conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is beneficial in our relationships, in business, in sales, and negotiations. There's so many different applications of how this can help us in our day-to-day lives. And then thirdly, and the last pillar we have is emotional yielding. Emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with our own interpersonal conflicts. So oftentimes things will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path. And we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But by adapting meditation into our lives and being able to stay more present and aware, when these things happen to us, we can deal with them from a balanced place rather than an emotional imbalance, and oftentimes make a more educated decision on how we want to go down that path or deal with that issue. And this can save us a lot of heartache on the other side. And I've been explaining this idea of yielding now. I've been running this academy for 30 years. I've done it many times. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is yielding makes a lot of sense. And in fact, I use yielding all the time. And while I would agree, I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time. It's if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you that detective would see things about the series of events in the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And I truly believe that without the meditative arts, there's things inside yourself and awareness and perceptions that you see in other people that you will never have any clue of in life unless you have a meditation practice in your life.
And I love how you describe this. It's a spiritual practice in yielding. The next question I have for you is, so when you talk about yielding, especially in today's really extremely aggressive culture, how do you avoid getting stepped on or walked over if you're talking about these yielding principles?
I'm glad you said that, because so many times people get this idea that yielding is giving up. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Yielding is not collapsing and giving up and letting somebody stomp on you. Yielding is being present and aware of the situation. So when a direction or an energy approaches you, you have the ability to guide it where you want it to go with the least amount of resistance so you can get the outcome that you want to see. Now, yielding strategy has been used in military strategy and in war conflicts for generations and many times over, and it couldn't be much more aggressive than combat. And so yielding is not the idea of giving up. It's the idea of understanding strategy, being present in the moment, and learning how to guide it on the path of least resistance.
Analogy and explanation. So, and I love this, how you reference Qigong, you also reference Tai Chi and yoga and this yin and yang and balance. One thing that was really particularly poignant during our conversation was this enhancing performance and using meditative arts for physical and mental excellence. Can you give examples from like how, for example, the Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan or Kobe or Tom Brady use this? They may use it unconsciously, but in a way they're using it to enhance even Olympic athletes too. Can you give an example?
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned those 4 athletes, because I happen to know for a fact that 3 of them use the meditative arts to improve their performance. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and who was the other one you mentioned?
Tom Brady.
Yeah, Tom Brady. So I know that when Phil Jackson was coaching the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers, that he was having his athletes practice meditation and Tai Chi because it helped improve their mental awareness and their focus and their timing. And part of this is there's so many things by having that ability to stay balanced and present that ties in really well with athletics, because I'm sure you've heard the term flow state before. Meditation, in a sense, is not too far off from that. However, that's an active idea. But by being able to stay balanced and present, we don't let those distractions take us too far off of our game. If you're in a basketball game and you miss a shot, if you spend 10 seconds thinking about that missed shot, you already missed 3 or 4 opportunities. And so having that idea to stay present and focused is one of the benefits of meditation. The other benefit is the ability to be more in tune with our mind-body connection. Because a lot of times, say, for example, you go to grab a glass of water, it's not just extending your arm and picking up the glass. You're shifting your weight, you're tightening up your abdominals, you're reaching. There's 1,000 different things going on inside the body. And the more in tune and the more aware we can be of those connections, it allows us to stay more relaxed. It allows us to stay more efficient so we can have more power and more intent in what we're doing. And there really is just 1,000 different ways that it can really benefit us. But those are some ideas on how it could work on a physical level.
Yeah, it's and the more I studied, like I've always been curious about the absolute best, like the top 0.01%. And it seems like they use these, for example, they'll use Eastern practices, meditative practices. A lot of them are starting to use like cryotherapy for recovery, and even NFL players are turning to yoga and Pilates for better strength and balance and coordination and flexibility because it helps them. A follow-up question I have for you is because, with these, a lot of people with, for example, like ADHD or OCD or even this concept of like fear of missing out, because you talked about comparing yourselves and missing out. How can these meditative practices guide you away from these states so that you don't need to rely on medication?
First off, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not telling anybody not to take their medications. You always need to check in with a physician before anything like that. But I think one of the things that really helps, especially with any kind of a stress disorder or something that is dealing with our mental imbalance, almost anytime there's any kind of stress, we're thinking about something that happened in the past and how we respond to that, or something that we're anticipating in the future. And when we can learn to recognize these imbalances without getting 2 miles down the muddy road, it's a lot easier to stay in that present state of mind and be more in control of our physical, mental, and emotional outcomes. Now, this is something that takes consistency, and we need to practice on a day-to-day basis. And one of the things that I think is a bit misguided when people go to a meditation practice is they'll hear that say it's good for panic attacks, and then they'll learn a meditation technique and they'll say, okay, when I have a panic attack, I'm going to go practice. And that's saying, I'm hungry, I want an apple, I'm going to go plant a seed. You can't do that. You have to cultivate the practice and build the repetitions so you have the strategy and the power and the ability when these imbalances occur to find your center and find your focus. It's just like going to the gym. You can't go one day and go bench press 400 pounds. You got to work up to it. You got to put time and energy into it and get those repetitions in and build up that strength. And meditation is the same thing. You will benefit from day one. However, you accumulate your ability and your strength through repetition. And that strength, I don't just mean physical strength, your ability to be aware of your physical state, your mental state, and your emotional state, and then how to adjust and control those so you can get whatever outcome you want.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Yeah, I really love this. And again, I love this conversation. And it looks like you talk about the yielding warriors, like how you use it in combat. That's why I love the martial arts too. You have a couple resources for the audience. You have the Yielding Warrior program, and then you also have a copy of your book as well. And so how can people find you if they were more interested in learning more about you and what you have to say? And I really enjoyed this conversation, by the way. And how can they connect with you?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And anybody who's interested in this philosophy or the style of training, I'm giving away a free copy of my book. You just pay for shipping and handling. If you go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book, you could order a free copy of that. And then also at theyieldingwarrior.com, you can get introduced to my online program that teaches you how to build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts and follow any one of those 5 directions we talked about and learn your kind of shortest path to get what you want to achieve. And then I also have my teacher training program up there. So for anybody who's looking on ways to deliver these arts and hand them down to add another pillar in your business, or I get a lot of yoga studios and martial arts studios who are looking to add a new clientele, because most martial arts academies and yoga studios are looking at 20s, 30s, and 40s, but having a meditation practice in your life, you can target 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and I even have a couple 90-year-olds coming in here. And you can really open up your possibilities by reaching out to a wider market.
Yeah, I really love that. And I really enjoyed the conversation, and keep up the great work.
Yeah, thanks for having me.